Hi, everyone, and welcome to 2 Past Midnight, your favorite show where we cover unsolved mysteries, the paranormal, creepy stories, internet horrors, and unsolved crimes. I'm your host, Kai.
And I'm Yina, and today we're going to be talking about the Yuba County Five case. And this is a pretty big one. I hope you're strapped in again for this.
I've heard some things about it. I just know some people went missing from what I understand. But I'm quite curious to hear more about this case. Very, very excited.
The Yuba County Five were a group of 5 young men from Yuba City, California. The group consisted of Ted Weiher, Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, Jack Huett, and Gary Mathias, each with mild intellectual disabilities or psychiatric conditions. All of these men were pretty close friends, and their families described them as gentle, friendly, and not the type to act reckless. I'm just going to go into a bit of slight detail about each one of the men's mental capability, just like for a bit of context. So Ted Weiher, born in 1946, was known for his gentle nature, even though he was quite a large guy. He faced some intellectual challenges that required supervision, but had a job repairing cables. So he kept a job that entire time, which is pretty good. Jack Madruga, born in 1947, was diagnosed with an intellectual disability, but despite having below average IQ, he graduated high school and served 2 years in the army. He lived with his mother, who described him as intelligent and fun. Bill Sterling, aged 29, was deeply religious, and his faith inspired him to help others. He actively participated in several churches and even a Christian singles group. Bill was diagnosed with an intellectual disability, possibly on the autism spectrum, which contributed to his naivety, but he was also exceptionally kind. Between the ages of 8 to 19, he spent time in 2 mental health institutions for hyperactivity issues that occasionally resulted in confrontation. Jack Huett, aged 24, was the youngest and most reserved member of the group. His parents described him as being challenged from birth, which was common language from that era. Jack also managed asthma and was considered to have the most significant intellectual challenges within the group. However, he still functioned well and had a close relationship with his family and friends, in particular, Ted Weiher, who often looked out for him. And last but not least, Gary Mathias, 25, was previously discharged from the army for violent outbursts and assaults. He was later diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, but with the help of daily medication, he became a stellar patient, and all of his issues were under control.
Well, from what I hear, this is a group of people who, have their own struggles in their daily lives. I mean, I do play the part of somewhat of a funny guy on this show, but out of respect to these people, I think it would be quite distasteful to make any jokes. I think these people had very tough lives, and I think it's very inspiring how they've managed to live day to day, managing these obstacles that life has given them. And be very functional. From what I hear, they seem to be very, very functional members of society, and it's quite inspiring to
actually
hear
they
about
were
them.
fully capable, I'm pretty sure. They were top athletes. They would compete, and I think they did good for themselves, considering.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like, having been familiar with this case for however long I have been, it's very odd revisiting these cases, because when we hear about it on the news, right, when we read about it, maybe even, we don't really look into like the whole setup for the people. We just know 5 people vanished, and this is why I don't really like news reports nowadays. I feel like a lot of headlines are just shock factor. There's not really, like, there probably is a lot of information about the people themselves, but I just quite enjoy our show because we get to learn a lot about the people, and we get to see life through the lens a little bit, and this group of 5 people really is quite inspiring, and I think everybody could learn a little bit from them, having faced so many challenges and gone through them like they have. I think they're really cool. They were really cool people. Yeah.
On the night of February 24th, 1978, the 5 men drove Jack Madruga's Mercury to Chico to watch a college basketball game. The boys, as they were called collectively, were star athletes themselves. They played together at the Yuba City Rehabilitation Center often, and were set to compete in a tournament by the Special Olympics the next day, February 25th. It was the tournament they were eager to win. After the basketball game on February 24th, the boys stopped at a convenience store after the game, stocking up on candy and milk for the long ride back home. The colleague from the convenience store stated they were seen heading off in the direction of Yuba City. They had all called their parents previous to this, assuring them they would all get home early to make sure they are well rested for the game tomorrow. This was the last time anybody saw or heard of the 5 boys.
Whew. That is not a lot of information, I feel like, for us to kind of, break down. But definitely, I would say we can agree something happened, right? There's no argument to make because, they have plans for the future.
Yeah.
They're not, they have a game that they're excited for. They called their parents, they made sure that their parents are informed. They have an important game the next day. So I would assume something happened along the road home. What that is with this limited information, it's hard to figure out, isn't it? It's probably a mystery. But I think again, I'm gonna be very clear on this. Athletes with the challenges they have also have jobs and stuff. Big mad respect from me to these people, like incredible, just source of inspiration again. But it's quite tough to talk about these cases. I mean, we had the Elisa Lam case, if you remember, where she also had some, mental health issues. We later discovered, and we mentioned as well in our video. It's quite hard to judge these cases where this sort of mental aspect is, because you can't really think rationally in the eyes of the victims or the members of disappearance cases or any sort of, mystery or crime, because sometimes people don't have rational episodes, right?
Yeah.
So the options that open up with that sort of factor are, dare I say, limitless, right? And it's tough to call on what happened. I assume we'll have more information down the line. But right now it's looking like a pretty sad case. A very, very sad case. It's not looking good. What are your thoughts up to this point? What is going through your mind
I
right
think
now?
that they seem like a very rational group. I mean, they're all in their 20s, late 20s, early 30s, and I mean, considering everyone knows them as pretty, chill, nothing crazy. The family said that they would never act reckless, and they were not the type to do that. And therefore, I don't know. But anything can happen, And I guess we'll see that.
Yep. I agree.
The mothers of the boys began phoning each other at 5 a.m. on Saturday morning. None of the boys had come home. None except Mathias had ever stayed out all night before. At 8 a.m. the same morning, Jack Madruga's mother called the police, due to the unlikeliness of any of the boys to go anywhere strange enough to explain their late arrival home. The police put out a notice on Madruga's 69 Montego, and for multiple days, still, there was no sighting or any information on the boys' whereabouts. However, on Monday, February 27th, a U.S. Forest Service ranger reported that they had found Madruga's car abandoned in a snowbank on a mountain road in the Plumas National Forest, over 50 miles from Yuba City. The ranger told investigators he had first seen it 2 days earlier, but assumed it belonged to a skier. The vehicle was located at 4,400 feet elevation, past the mountain snowline, meaning that for the boys to get to this location, they had to have driven 70 miles in the wrong direction up a partially unpaved road.
Now that is weird. That is
Pretty weird for them, anyway.
that is weird. Yeah, like you know what this makes me think of? Like when I hear this, it makes me think of cults in a way.
Okay.
I don't know why. Like I'm not gonna say this is a rational thought that bumped into my brain, but you know, I just can't fathom why. Like I'm sure you can make a wrong turn, but for 70 miles up a mountain and an unpaved road, it feels like somebody knew this location. Somebody knew this place, if you will, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it could be a cult like activity. And they thought, we'll just we'll meet up with our cult leader or something. That's I'm just gonna yap for a bit. We'll meet up with our cult leader, do our little ritual, pack up and go home, right? Makes me think ritual went wrong, something happened, poof, they disappear. But definitely this does not feel. It's just such an odd place to park, such an odd place to stop. It's not really making much sense unless somebody already knew the location. I don't know.
I do want to add on to that obviously because they were so far away from home and they must have driven a completely different way. The place that the car was found abandoned was actually the complete opposite way to home. But they questioned the mothers, and supposedly the boys had absolutely no familiarity with the area whatsoever. They didn't know where they were. The families didn't even know this area. And apparently the guys didn't either.
Okay, so maybe my theory could be wrong. But it just doesn't.
I mean, but we don't know, obviously, because
like, why?
They're gone. But
yeah, yes. we don't know. We don't really know. Maybe they did have familiarity
maybe one of them
with this
did,
place, right?
And
like we
led the boys to that area. We don't know.
Maybe. Yeah. It's starting to feel very. This is where it gets creepy, I suppose. It's just no rationale, no real like evidence as to why. There's just not really like a trail to why they stopped here, why they came here, right? So we're just left to wonder. And that's why the cult idea sprung into my head, is because I'm just wondering, right?
It does get pretty creepy. It does get pretty creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Really, really sick. I don't know. I'm gonna think about this and let's see if we can get maybe some more information that we can discuss. But so far, it's a pretty tough nut to crack and to theorize about. I can tell you that much.
When investigators checked out the car, the seats were littered with wrappers of snacks they purchased in the convenience store in Chicago. However, the keys were missing from the vehicle. The gas tank was a quarter full, and the car still started immediately when police hotwired it. Investigators stated that there were skid marks from the tires and had assumed the car was stuck. However, even though the car was supposedly stuck, nobody had attempted to even push the vehicle out of the snowbank, which either of the 5 men could have easily done so. On Sunday, June 4th, 1978, 4 months later from the initial disappearance, motorcyclists in Plumas National Forest came upon a deserted trailer deep in the woods at the end of the gravel road where the Mercury had been abandoned. They entered the trailer out of curiosity, and there lay the decaying body of Ted Weiher, stretched out on a bed, wrapped up in 8 sheets, almost mummified, with one around his head. His body was completely rotten, his face not even recognizable, and he was missing 5 toes. Placed neatly next to the bed where his frail body lay, were his ring engraved with Ted, his gold necklace, his wallet with cash inside, and a golden watch, which the family said did not belong to any of the 5 boys. His cause of death was ruled to be a pulmonary edema that resulted from pneumonia.
Well, this reads like cult-like activities to me. I mean, just a bunch of weird stuff in different places. Like, why is Huett's skull found 100 yards away from his backbone? Like, that doesn't make any sense, right? 2 bodies ravaged by animals. I mean, that could be cause of death, could be an aftermath of what happened during the cult-like activity. But in general, right? In general, if we look at this through the guy's lens, right? You have an RV full of, an RV, shelter, outhouse with food for a year, right? You have warmth, you have food, you have drinks, you have a toilet, you have board games, whatever. Literally the jackpot of survival, right? Besides the fact they still had a quarter tank left, they could have lifted the car out of where it was stuck easily as 5 because they were athletes, they were strong. Okay? So they arrive to this place. They don't actually get home. They're lost. Supposedly lost. They stumble upon this gold mine of survival. Gold mine. And they all die. Like, they all just die. You know what I mean? One of them is mummified. The other one is, like, ripped apart in half. The other 2 are just eaten alive. And then that's it. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And I think, personally, this is something that I'm gonna sort of whip out of my pocket. Cults love vulnerable people. They adore easily manipulatable people because for them, those are the most loyal cult followers. Cults, and this is from my experience living where I live. We've learned this in school because it used to be quite a problem back in the day. Not when I was a kid, but before, during my parents' time. Cults love to stand outside of funerals. They love to prey on people who grieve, people who are challenged in their daily life by whatever it may be, any sort of obstacles, and they will give you these promises of success and happiness and spiritual connection to their true God. They will often undermine other religions during their little speech, right? And and again, I'm going to be the asshole here. If I was a cult recruiter and you told me there's a basketball team of 5 people who all have some sort of mental disability, right? I would want to recruit them. I would be like, okay, that's the easiest lick of 95, that's like so free. Right? Or am I wrong?
I agree, but I also think that all kind of lines are also leading to the fact that they were in a snow mountain. They were obviously cold, frostbite, no toes. Just everything just leads to basically them being cold, them trying to maybe find some sort of shelter, finding it. But then what happens after that? I can explain everything up to that. The car got stuck. They try and find shelter again. But after that, it just kind of gets a bit, foggy because... But also to add on to that, we don't know if Weiher was the only person that found the trailer. We don't know if all of them found the trailer or maybe 3 or 4 of them. And also to add on to that, the last guy, Gary Mathias, he was never found. They found his shoes in the trailer, which means that obviously Weiher wasn't alone in the trailer. But after that, he wasn't found. The only thing that I can explain is maybe one of them went out to see if they could find help because no one was in the trailer. And then one guy went missing. And then the rest said, oh, we have to go out and find the one guy who went out to try and find help. And then they all just got caught in the crossfire.
Yeah, but at what point do we turn the heat on? You know what I mean? Like at some point, surely we turn the heat on.
I mean, again, maybe, the boys having some sort of mental disability among all of them. Maybe they just thought someone will come out looking for us. Maybe they thought we can't touch those supplies because maybe it was someone's trailer. Maybe they found belongings and I don't know. I can't explain it, but they must have been thinking something to not use those supplies given to them, especially in the sort of serious situation they were in. Or maybe, again, it's something like you said. Maybe someone led them there. Maybe it was sort of a homicidal case. Maybe it was a homicide and then they threw the bodies out, and that's when obviously they were ravaged and they were, submitted to the cold. There are a bunch of theories behind it, which we will get into.
Let's do that.
Well, the first theory, it's not really a theory. It's a guy called Joseph Scones. He was 55 and he lived in Sacramento. He told police that he had been driving just up the road to check on his cabin near the Bucks Lake when his Volkswagen Beetle became stuck in a snowbank. He supposedly suffered a heart attack while trying to push it free, and then he lay down inside the car for hours in completely paralyzing pain. And they later confirmed he did have a heart attack. But around 11:30 that exact same night, headlights appeared on the road behind him. Scones pulled himself up from the car and saw several men standing together in the glare of headlights, along with what appeared to be a woman holding a baby. He called to them for help, and then the group immediately stopped talking and their headlights completely went out. Scones returned to the Volkswagen and lay down. 2 hours later, he told police flashlight beams appeared outside of his window. Again, he yelled for help and the flashlights went out and no one responded. In the steely hours before dawn on Saturday, February 25th, Scones recovered enough to walk for help to a lodge down the mountain. He passed the Mercury Montego, abandoned on the road below where hours earlier he had heard voices and seen lights. It was now silent, dark, and empty. And this is, possibly the last sighting of the boys. I mean, supposedly he saw them. There was a woman with a baby. And when he tried to yell at them for help, everyone went quiet. I mean, how do you explain that?
Well, two theories kind of strike my mind. First of all, what sane woman with a baby would go in a car with 5 people? 5 men, nonetheless, right? It's, again, reads like a cult-like experience to me, at least. If we want to be really, really creative, the woman could have been a murderer, serial killer. And as you said, it could have been a homicide, and the baby was just her MO. Maybe it's what she used, as a sort of excuse to seem frail and scared and in need of help, right? We could call her, the mother and the toddler serial killer duo. We could call it that. It's also a possibility, but now we have an extra player and a half, if you count the baby. We have an extra player and a half in the sort of story. And the fact that there was another person involved in this group of 5 makes me now think more that it was a cult-like activity. And the reason why they went up and checked again is to make sure that he's not disrupting their ritual. That's what I think. Because why would you need to check on a man who you're not going to help? You just want him to not be a bother. You just want him to wander around and see what you're up to.
I do kind of see where you're coming from. I've seen actually a bunch of stories before, just randomly in my day-to-day life, of people using pregnant women or women with babies as sort of a bait to kind of, make the people that they're trying to get less worried. Because I think if a big mafia man came up to them, they probably wouldn't, be so helpful.
Exactly.
But a woman with a baby, especially with 5 guys who have history of mental illness, I think that it is a good possibility that she was used as a bait, or yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think. You know, it was creepy enough without the woman and the baby. Now we have a woman with the baby. Where is the woman with the baby? Probably killing more people. That's what I'm thinking. You know, and to sort of break it down, and at the same time draw a little conclusion around this, right? It's a lot of really, really weird occurrences back to back. Something that doesn't make sense, and then the decisions of the people make even less sense. And that's, I think, where a lot of these confusing cases come from, essentially, is what made them do the thing that they shouldn't have done. What made them not act rationally. And I think when I previously thought maybe it was the leader of the group who was indicted into a cult, maybe it was this woman with the baby leading their decisions and telling them, you're gonna get home if you do this, you're gonna go home if you do this. Kind of like, you know, in the TV show From, where a lot of things promise you you're gonna get home if you do this thing that makes no sense and is really bad. Ultimately, you don't really get home, do you? That's kind of what I'm thinking. And this is why I love this show, is because we get to hear, you know, the opinions of our viewers, and we always want to hear your theories on this and what you think happened, because then maybe when we do a sort of review, we'll be revisiting cases and talking about stuff. We'll definitely mention some of the theories in the comments, but it's just a really odd and creepy case. That's what I'm thinking.
It is. It is, definitely. And a bunch of people have put in their thoughts on Reddit, and I'm sure on other websites too. They think that a possibility it could be the guy who had a heart attack doing something crazy. Another theory was that Gary Mathias, the one who was actually never found, his body, his remains, nothing was ever found. He had sort of, you know, a history of schizophrenia. I'd say probably one of the, you know, harshest mental health problem in the group, especially because he was never found. And there's a bunch of explanations for that. His body could have just, you know,
decayed,
succumbed to nature.
Yeah,
exactly. To the point where it was completely just, you know. But there is a theory that he, you know, went crazy. Maybe he was seeing things. Maybe there's just a lot of stuff and a lot of theories that, you know, point it towards it being a homicide, like you know, a quadruple homicide.
I definitely, sorry for interrupting you. I definitely think this is more of a whodunit rather than what happened. 100%. I don't think this is a case where we are wondering what happened. It's more so the who happened in question.
I agree. I mean, for my personal opinion, I think it's too weird to just be a story where, you know, 5 men go into a forest full of snow and they find a trailer and they don't eat any food and they just die of, you know, frostbite and, you know, extremities. But when I also read into this a bit further, there were a bunch of people who actually live in that area where the car was abandoned and where the bodies were found. And a bunch of people were saying that it was actually not as hard as you think it is to get lost. And it is very easy to go off the wrong path when you're traveling in that direction. 70 miles from home, I'm not sure. 70 miles from their destination in the wrong direction, I'm not sure. But a bunch of people were saying that it was very easy to go off road and find yourself stuck and not knowing where you are.
Yeah. I mean, those people can say that. I will reply to them with, why not turn the heat on in the camper? Case closed. It's a cult-like homicide. Bang. we figured it out. Only at 2 past midnight, guys. This is where we figure things out. No, in complete seriousness, a lot of options are on the table. We can discuss them. We can talk about them. That's all we can really do. We can't go back in time, spectate the whole ordeal. And unless there's more evidence or somebody comes forward, we're probably never going to find out what happened. But, well, there are a lot of options on the table. There is no real conclusion to this case that we can sort of end it on. And me and Yina could be going back and forth having a conversation about this for hours. Forever. Really, forever. So I'm going to be the bad guy here and conclude the episode with it has been a really creepy case. A lot of things to sort of uncover and talk about. And it has been quite an interesting experience for us to cover. I think this case is it's quite a handful, this case. But if you listeners or watchers have any theories, please do leave them in the comments. And when we do revisit the case, once maybe there's more evidence, or maybe we do a little rerun of the case, we'll definitely include some of your wildest theories and some of your even most plausible theories if you can come up with any of those. That would be really, really awesome to read. And don't forget, if you have any case recommendations, also leave them in the comments. We don't guarantee that we'll cover them, but we'll definitely consider them and have a chat with Yina if we do want to go forward with those. And yeah, I think we've covered pretty much most of it. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. We have been 2 past midnight, your favorite or soon to be favorite show that covers the paranormal, scary, unsolved mysteries, unsolved crimes, true crime, all the, internet horrors, all the stuff that might scratch your horror brain a little bit. And we'll see you in the next one.